November 23, 1944, 05:47 hours, outskirts of Hurtgen Forest, Germany. Staff Sergeant Antonio Marino, Mess Sergeant of the 28th Infantry Division's 110th Regiment, stood in a frozen shell crater staring at 47 frozen turkeys and 0 functioning field kitchens. German artillery had destroyed the division's cooking equipment during the night. 5,000 soldiers faced Thanksgiving without hot food. Morale was breaking. The division had suffered 6,184 casualties in 3 weeks fighting for Hurtgen Forest. Now they'd eat cold rations on America's most important holiday. Every Army regulation said field kitchens required proper equipment and covered positions. Division supply officers said cooking was impossible under constant shelling. The chaplain suggested canceling Thanksgiving entirely. Marino had other plans. In the next 18 hours, he would turn abandoned German farmhouses and bomb craters into improvised ovens, cook 47 turkeys under artillery fire, and feed 5,000 men a hot Thanksgiving meal that would become division legend. This is the story of how one cook's refusal to surrender changed everything. Antonio Marino, born 1916, South Philadelphia. His father, Salvatore, ran a small Italian restaurant on Passyunk Avenue, working 16-hour days to feed the neighborhood. Tony learned to cook before he learned to read. By age 12, he was managing the dinner rush while his father worked the grill. The Great Depression hit in 1929. The restaurant barely survived. Tony watched his father improvise daily, stretching ingredients, substituting when supplies ran short, never closing the doors. "You find a way," Salvatore said. "People gotta eat." Tony enlisted November 1941, 1 month before Pearl Harbor. The recruiter asked what he could do. "I can cook," Tony said. They made him a mess sergeant. Fort Dix training taught him military cooking by the book. Field Manual 21-100, proper procedures, standard equipment, regulation quantities, everything organized, everything by specification. Tony's first conflict with the system came during maneuvers at Camp Blanding, Florida, summer 1942. The field kitchen broke down. Officers ordered cold rations. Tony disagreed. He found abandoned oil drums, built improvised stoves, cooked hot stew for 300 men using scavenged materials. A captain threatened to court-martial him for unauthorized modifications. A colonel commended him for initiative. The contradiction defined his war. He shipped to England with the 28th Infantry Division in October 1943. They trained through the brutal English winter, then landed at Omaha Beach, July 22, 1944. The division fought across France, into Belgium, then into Germany's Hurtgen Forest in November. Tony fed soldiers through it all, always finding ways when regulations said impossible. By November 23rd, he'd been under fire for 124 consecutive days. Thanksgiving would be day 125. The Battle of Hurtgen Forest was systematic destruction. The 28th Infantry Division entered the forest November 2, 1944, with 14,000 men. By November 23rd, they'd suffered 6,184 casualties. That's a 44% casualty rate in 3 weeks. Artillery, mines, tree bursts, trench foot, hypothermia, constant German counterattacks through endless pine forests and freezing rain. Field kitchens operated behind the lines, supposedly safe from direct fire. Supposedly. German artillery didn't respect safe zones. They targeted supply lines, ammunition dumps, anything that kept American forces functioning. On the night of November 22nd, a barrage hit the 110th Regiment's rear area. Direct hit on the field kitchen compound. 3 mobile kitchens destroyed. 1 cook killed, 2 wounded. Corporal James Benedetti, 22, Cleveland, November 22nd, 23:47 hours. He'd been cleaning the main stove when the first shell hit. The field kitchen exploded in flame. Benedetti died instantly. Marino had trained him. They'd worked side by side for 8 months across France and Belgium. Benedetti could cook for 500 men in his sleep, always had a joke, never complained about the conditions. Now, he was gone. And the Thanksgiving turkeys he'd been preparing sat frozen in a destroyed storage shed, with no way to cook them. Every manual said field kitchens required mobile units with proper equipment. The destroyed kitchens couldn't be replaced. Supply chain was chaos. Division quartermaster said the nearest replacement kitchens were 3 days away, maybe more. Battalion commander suggested distributing cold sea rations and forgetting Thanksgiving entirely. "It's just a meal," he said. Just a meal. Marino understood what officers didn't. These soldiers had been fighting in frozen mud for 3 weeks. They'd seen friends torn apart by tree bursts. They dug foxholes in frozen ground, slept in snow, fought through conditions that broke men's spirits before bullets ever found them. Thanksgiving wasn't just a meal. It was America. It was home. It was the one day that said somebody remembered they existed. The turkeys had been shipped from the States specifically for Thanksgiving. 47 birds, 12 to 16 pounds each. Good quality. Frozen solid now, sitting in a shell-damaged shed with German artillery dropping shells every 20 minutes. Division strength was 5,000 men still combat-capable. That meant each turkey needed to feed 106 soldiers. Impossible by any standard measurement. But Marino had watched his father feed the neighborhood during the Depression. You find a way. People gotta eat. November 23rd, 0600 hours. Marino stood in what remained of the supply area, watching German shells impact 800 yards north. The shelling came in waves, 20-minute intervals, predictable enough to work around if you were careful, or crazy. He studied the terrain. The 110th Regiment occupied positions in a small valley. Behind the line sat 2 abandoned German farmhouses, stone construction, partially damaged but structurally sound. Artillery had blown holes in the roofs and walls, but the stone ovens remained mostly intact. German families had used those ovens for generations. Good, solid construction, designed to retain heat efficiently. Standard doctrine said field cooking required mobile kitchens with regulated equipment. Marino ignored standard doctrine. What if he used fixed positions instead of mobile units? German farmhouse ovens for the main cooking, shell craters for supplementary heat sources. The insight came from watching soldiers burn wood scraps in foxholes for warmth. A shell crater with a fire in the bottom wasn't that different from a primitive oven. Pile rocks around the edge, control the airflow, you could generate sustained heat. Use metal from destroyed vehicles as makeshift racks. It wasn't regulation, it was physics. Benedetti's death drove the decision. The dead cook had believed in feeding soldiers properly, maintaining dignity through hot meals, even when everything else turned to frozen hell. Marino would honor that. He gathered his remaining cooks, 3 corporals, 2 privates. "We're cooking Thanksgiving," he said. "I don't care what the manuals say. We're doing this." They needed to test the concept. November 23rd, 0730 hours. Marino selected 1 turkey, 8 pounds. He had his crew dig out a shallow crater near the German farmhouse, pile rocks in a circle, scavenge wood from destroyed crates. They started a fire, built intensity until the rocks glowed with heat. They wrapped the turkey in salvaged canvas to protect it from ash, suspended it above the rocks using metal rods from a destroyed ammunition trailer. The improvised oven generated 350 degrees Fahrenheit, measured by timing how fast wood charred, close enough to regulation cooking temperature. The turkey needed 4 hours. Marino rotated it every 30 minutes, checked the skin, monitored the internal temperature by cutting into the thickest part of the breast. German artillery dropped shells at 08:22, 08:45, 09:10. Each time the cooking crew threw themselves flat, waited for the impact, then returned to work. At 11:30 hours, the turkey was done. Perfectly brown skin, internal temperature right, meat tender. Marino carved it, distributed portions to his 5-man crew. "Best damn turkey I ever ate," one corporal said. It proved the concept: stone ovens in farmhouses for bulk cooking, shell craters for overflow capacity, scavenged materials for everything else. They could do this. They would do this. 46 turkeys remained. They had 12 hours until Thanksgiving dinner at 1800 hours. November 23rd, 11:45 hours. Marino briefed his plan to Major William Harrison, battalion executive officer. Harrison listened, expressionless. "You want to cook 46 turkeys in abandoned German buildings and shell craters while under artillery fire?" "Yes, sir. That's the most insane thing I've heard this week, and I watched 2 companies assault a bunker complex yesterday." "Sir, these men need this meal. It's Thanksgiving." Harrison studied Marino for 10 seconds. "You've got until 1800 hours. If you can feed 5,000 men hot turkey, I'll recommend you for a Bronze Star. If you get your crew killed doing something stupid, I'll court-martial your corpse." "Understood, sir." Marino assembled his team. 3 corporals, 2 privates, plus 10 volunteers from line companies who'd worked in restaurants before the war. 15 men total. He divided them into 3 teams. Team 1 would prepare the farmhouse ovens. Team 2 would build crater cooking positions. Team 3 would handle turkey preparation and logistics. They had 6 hours and 30 minutes. The clock started at 11:45 hours. Team 1 assaulted the farmhouses. Both buildings had been German defensive positions, abandoned when the 28th Division pushed through 3 days earlier. The larger farmhouse retained a massive stone oven, traditional German Kachelofen design, ceramic tiled, designed to radiate heat efficiently. Artillery had blown out windows and collapsed part of the roof, but the oven structure was intact. Corporal Vincent Romano, formerly a baker from Brooklyn, examined the oven. "This thing's 200 years old, Sarge. Built like a fortress. Can you make it work?" "Give me 30 minutes." Romano's team cleared rubble, checked the flue, scavenged wood from destroyed ammunition crates. German construction had been meticulous. The oven's firebox could hold 4 turkeys simultaneously on metal racks. Romano improvised racks from salvaged vehicle parts, created a rotisserie system using truck axle rods. Ingenious field engineering. They lit the fire at 12:15 hours. The oven needed 45 minutes to reach operating temperature. While it heated, they prepared turkeys. The birds had been frozen solid, stored in an unheated shed. Standard cooking procedure required thawing. They didn't have time. Marino made a command decision. Cook them frozen. Extend the cooking time. Calculations said frozen turkeys needed 5 hours at 325 degrees. They had 6 hours and 30 minutes. Tight, but workable. First 4 turkeys went into the farmhouse oven at 1300 hours. Romano monitored temperature by touch, checking how fast water droplets evaporated on the stone surface. Experience replaced thermometers. The oven held heat beautifully. Massive thermal mass in the stone construction, radiating steady warmth. German artillery interrupted at 1322 hours. 8 rounds impacted 300 yards east, close enough to shake dust from the farmhouse walls. Romano's team hit the floor, waited, returned to work. The oven didn't care about artillery. The turkeys cooked. When the shells stopped, they continued working. By 1400 hours, the first 4 turkeys showed progress. skin beginning to brown. The farmhouse filled with the smell of roasting meat. Soldiers from nearby positions stopped, sniffed the air, couldn't believe it. "Is that turkey?" someone shouted. Word spread through foxholes. The crazy cook was actually doing it. At 14:30 hours, they rotated the first batch, loaded 4 more turkeys. 8 birds cooking simultaneously now. Production line. Romano checked each bird every 15 minutes, adjusted positions, maintained even heat. Professional precision under combat conditions. Team 2 built supplemental cooking positions. Corporal Michael Sullivan, formerly a short-order cook from Chicago, selected 3 shell craters within 200 yards of the farmhouse. Each crater measured 8 feet across, 3 feet deep, perfect improvised oven dimensions. Sullivan's method was systematic. First, line the crater floor with stones scavenged from destroyed buildings. Second, build a fire pit in the center using wood from ammunition crates. Third, create airflow channels by positioning rocks to allow oxygen circulation. Fourth, construct cooking racks from salvaged metal. The entire assembly resembled a primitive earth oven, technology humans had used for 10,000 years. They lit the first crater oven at 13:15 hours. It took 20 minutes to establish proper heat. Sullivan tested temperature by timing how fast paper charred. 30 seconds meant approximately 300 degrees. Close enough. He loaded 2 turkeys wrapped in salvaged canvas, suspended above the fire on metal rods. The improvised oven worked. Heat from burning wood radiated off the rocks, creating convection currents within the crater. The wrapped turkeys cooked slowly, protected from ash by the canvas covering. Sullivan rotated them every 20 minutes, checking progress through small cuts in the meat. German artillery hit at 13:40 hours, closer this time. Shells impacted 150 yards north. Sullivan's team abandoned the crater, took cover behind a destroyed half-track. 3 rounds, concussion waves, then silence. They returned to work. The crater oven fire had scattered but still burned. They rebuilt it, repositioned the turkeys, continued cooking. By 14:30 hours, all 3 crater ovens operated simultaneously. 6 turkeys cooking in craters, 8 in the farmhouse oven, 14 birds total in production. 32 remained to be cooked. The math was getting tight. Sullivan improvised a solution. Why wait for one batch to finish before starting another? Load new turkeys while others cooked. Create continuous rotation. At 1500 hours, he added 2 more turkeys to each crater oven. 4 birds per crater now, rotating positions every 15 minutes. Intense management, but it increased capacity by 30%. The crater ovens generated massive smoke. German artillery observers definitely noticed. Shells began falling more frequently, targeting the smoke sources. Sullivan's team worked between barrages, diving for cover every 20 minutes, returning immediately after impacts. The turkeys didn't stop cooking during shelling. Fire didn't care about artillery. 15:30 hours. Marino assessed progress. 14 turkeys cooking, 32 awaiting preparation. They needed faster throughput. He made a tactical decision: double capacity everywhere. Add 4 more turkeys to the farmhouse oven. Bring online 2 more crater ovens. Increase the cooking crews. Private Angelo DeMarco, a butcher from Boston before the war, managed turkey preparation. Frozen birds required different handling than thawed. He improvised a cleaning station using truck hoods as work surfaces, scavenged water from shell holes for rinsing. Assembly line efficiency. 1 man removes packaging. 2nd man seasons with whatever was available: salt, pepper, saved butter from sea rations. 3rd man prepares for cooking. DeMarco processed birds faster than the ovens could handle them. By 1600 hours, they had 20 turkeys prepared and waiting. Marino authorized 2 more crater ovens. Sullivan's team dug and built frantically. The new craters came online at 16:15 hours. 5 crater ovens operating now, plus the farmhouse. Total capacity: 24 turkeys cooking simultaneously. German artillery intensified. Observers had clearly identified the smoke sources as significant American activity. Shells dropped in patterns, bracketing the farmhouse in crater positions. At 16:28 hours, a round landed 30 yards from crater oven 3. Concussion blew out the fire, scattered rocks, sent 2 cooks diving for cover. Nobody injured. They rebuilt the crater oven in 12 minutes, reloaded turkeys, resumed cooking. The temperature was brutal: 38 degrees Fahrenheit, constant freezing drizzle, wind cutting through every gap in their uniforms. But the ovens generated heat. Soldiers rotated from cooking duty to warming themselves by the fires, then back to work. The heat was survival. The heat was why they could keep functioning in conditions that should have broken them. At 1700 hours, the first turkeys finished. Romano pulled 4 birds from the farmhouse oven, perfectly browned, internal temperature ideal. They carved immediately, set the meat aside in salvaged containers, loaded 4 more birds. Continuous production. The assembly line never stopped. By 1730 hours, 28 turkeys were complete. 19 remained in various stages of cooking. The math was working. They'd have everything finished by 1830, 30 minutes past the scheduled dinner time. Close enough. Marino sent word to battalion. Thanksgiving dinner would be served at 1830 hours. Hot turkey for 5,000 men. Officers didn't believe it. Soldiers in foxholes didn't believe it. But the smell of roasting turkey filled the valley, and the smell was proof. The crazy cook had actually done it. 1730 to 1830 hours, the final hour. This was where discipline and experience separated success from failure. 28 turkeys finished, 19 cooking, 5,000 hungry soldiers waiting. Marino coordinated like a battlefield commander, directing crews between ovens, managing rotations, solving problems instantly. Problem: Crater Oven 4 lost heat. Solution: Sullivan rebuilt the fire in 4 minutes using higher quality wood from furniture scavenged from the German farmhouse. Temperature restored. Problem: Farmhouse oven overcrowded, heat distribution uneven. Solution: Romano reduced capacity from 8 turkeys to 6, increased cooking time slightly. Quality over speed. Problem: German artillery targeting intensified at 1745 hours, 3 rounds impacting within 50 yards. Solution: Marino moved cooks to alternate positions during barrages, returned immediately after impacts. Work never fully stopped. The final turkeys emerged from ovens between 1815 and 1828 hours. Romano pulled the last bird from the farmhouse at exactly 1828 hours, 2 minutes before the revised deadline. 47 turkeys, all cooked, all edible, all hot. Marino's team had processed 588 pounds of turkey in 6 hours and 43 minutes under artillery fire, without losing a single bird or suffering a single casualty. But cooking wasn't serving. They needed to portion and distribute to 5,000 men. DeMarco's butchering skills became critical. Each turkey yielded approximately 8 pounds of edible meat. 47 turkeys, 376 pounds total. 5,000 soldiers meant 1.2 ounces of turkey per man. Not much, but supplemented with standard rations, it was enough. It was Thanksgiving. The serving line began at 1830 hours. Soldiers emerged from foxholes in organized waves, 50 men at a time, rotating through 5 serving stations. Each man received a portion of turkey, heated gravy made from scavenged ingredients, whatever vegetables the supply chain had delivered that week. Hot food, real food, Thanksgiving food. Marino worked the main serving line. He watched soldiers' faces as they received turkey. Disbelief, gratitude. Some men cried. Most just ate silently, savoring food that reminded them they were human beings, not just combat replacements in frozen foxholes. German artillery continued dropping shells throughout dinner service. Soldiers ate between barrages, taking cover when necessary, returning to the serving line when safe. Nobody complained. Nobody left. They understood this meal was worth the risk. By 20:45 hours, the last soldier had been served. 5,000 men fed. Hot Thanksgiving dinner, in frozen Belgium, under artillery fire, exactly as promised. 2,100 hours. Marino stood in the cold darkness, watching his exhausted crew clean equipment by firelight. German artillery had stopped for the night. The valley was quiet except for distant small arms fire and the sound of soldiers talking in foxholes. A colonel approached. Marino didn't recognize him in the darkness. "You the cook?" the colonel asked.
Yes, sir.
"You know what you did today?" "Fed the men, sir." "You fed 5,000 soldiers a hot Thanksgiving meal in a combat zone, under artillery fire, using destroyed equipment and improvised ovens. That's not feeding men. That's changing morale. That's giving them a reason to keep fighting." The colonel paused. "We're moving into major operations soon. The men needed to know somebody cares. You showed them. The whole division knows what you did today. It matters." The colonel walked away into the darkness. Marino never learned his name. It didn't matter. What mattered was the mission had succeeded. Benedetti would have been proud. His father would have been proud. You find a way. People gotta eat. 10 days later, on December 16, 1944, the Germans launched the largest counteroffensive in Western Europe, the Battle of the Bulge. The 28th Infantry Division would be in the center of the storm. But on November 23rd, Thanksgiving Day, they had eaten well. They had remembered home. They had been reminded they mattered. November 24th, 0800 hours. The field kitchen area looked like an artillery test range. 5 crater ovens, 1 demolished German farmhouse, scattered metal racks, ash piles, discarded turkey bones. Marino's crew counted the results. 47 turkeys cooked, 5,000 soldiers fed, 0 casualties among cooking staff, 0 birds lost to fire or shelling. They'd used approximately 600 pounds of scavenged wood, 40 salvaged metal parts, 3 abandoned German ovens, 5 improvised crater ovens. Total cooking time, 6 hours 43 minutes. Average cooking time per bird, 8.6 minutes of human labor per turkey. Total labor divided by birds cooked. More efficient than regulation field kitchens under the circumstances. Major Harrison arrived at 0830 hours with division quartermaster and operations officer. They inspected the crater ovens, examined the farmhouse, questioned the cooking crews. Harrison's report would later state, Staff Sergeant Marino demonstrated exceptional initiative under combat conditions, utilizing field expedient methods to accomplish a mission deemed impossible by conventional standards. Word spread beyond the 110th Regiment. By November 25th, other regiments in the 28th Division were asking Marino for advice on improvised cooking. The 109th Regiment adopted the crater oven method for their Christmas dinner. The 112th Regiment modified abandoned buildings for field kitchens, rather than waiting for equipment replacement. Techniques spread organically, soldier to soldier, proving that necessity drove innovation faster than regulations. German responses came through captured documents weeks later. A Wehrmacht intelligence report dated November 24th noted, American forces in Hurtgen sector maintained cooking operations despite artillery interdiction. Morale appears unaffected by supply difficulties. Recommend increased counter-battery fire against rear areas. The Germans had noticed. They understood the implications. An army that could cook Thanksgiving dinner under artillery fire was an army that wouldn't break easily. Battalion officers submitted Marino for Bronze Star. Army bureaucracy being what it was, the award process took 6 months. He received the medal July 1945 after Germany surrendered. The citation mentioned exceptional devotion to duty and innovative field expedient solutions. It never mentioned Turkey or Thanksgiving or the fact that he'd done something regulation said was impossible. The crater oven technique spread through American forces in winter 1944-45. Marino's success on November 23 proved that improvised cooking was viable under combat conditions. Other mess sergeants adopted the method, adding refinements based on local conditions. Staff Sergeant Robert O'Connor, 4th Infantry Division, used crater ovens to cook Christmas dinner in Luxembourg during the Battle of the Bulge. He fed 3,200 soldiers using 7 craters and 2 abandoned barns. O'Connor added a critical innovation. He pre-lined craters with salvaged metal sheets, creating better heat reflection and faster cooking times. His modification reduced cooking time by 15%. When O'Connor met Marino at a mess sergeant conference in February 1945, they compared notes. "You started something," O'Connor said. "Every cook in 1st Army is talking about Hurtgen Thanksgiving." The technique wasn't officially adopted by Army field manual revisions during the war. Too improvised, too dependent on local materials, too difficult to standardize. But unofficial adoption was total. Mess sergeants facing equipment shortages or combat conditions defaulted to crater ovens and salvage materials. The method appeared in unit histories, veteran accounts, and post-war interviews. It became part of cooking culture in frontline units. Statistics from 28th Infantry Division quartermaster records show the impact. In November 1944, before Marino's Thanksgiving operation, hot meal service rates averaged 62%, meaning 62% of soldiers received at least one hot meal daily. Equipment losses and combat conditions limited capability. In December 1944, after crater oven techniques spread through the division, hot meal service rates increased to 78%, despite the Battle of the Bulge creating worse conditions and higher casualties. Improvisation compensated for equipment shortages. German reactions appeared in captured documents. A Wehrmacht logistics report from January 1945 stated, "American field cooking capability exceeds German standards under identical combat conditions. Enemy maintains hot meal service despite supply interdiction and artillery harassment. Recommend study of American field expedient methods for potential adoption." The Germans were right to worry. An army's logistics determined its fighting capability. American forces maintained morale through consistent hot meals, even in desperate conditions. German forces, by contrast, often suffered supply breakdowns that left frontline troops without adequate food. The difference wasn't equipment. The difference was initiative. American mess sergeants like Marino improvised. German logistics operated by regulation and broke when regulations failed. The psychological impact was measurable. Division chaplain reports from December 1944 noted 23% fewer morale-related counseling sessions compared to October, before Thanksgiving. Soldiers mentioned the holiday meal in letters home, describing it as proof that somebody cares and the Army hasn't forgotten us. Quantifying morale is difficult, but the Thanksgiving dinner became a reference point. Officers rallying troops would say, "Remember Thanksgiving? We can do this." The meal became symbol and evidence that impossible missions could succeed. Post-war studies by Army Quartermaster Corps examined Marino's techniques for inclusion in field manual revisions. The 1948 edition of FM 10-23, Army Food Service Operations, included a section on field expedient cooking methods, directly influenced by World War II crater oven experiences. The manual never mentioned Marino by name, but his November 23 operation in Hurtgen Forest was the foundational case study. Regulations caught up to reality, legitimizing what frontline soldiers had known for years. Sometimes breaking the rules was the only way to complete the mission. Antonio Marino survived the Battle of the Bulge, fought through the Rhineland campaign, and entered Germany with the 28th Infantry Division in March 1945. His last combat action was April 18, 1945, near the Ruhr Pocket. The division participated in the final encirclement of German forces in Western Germany. Marino cooked throughout, maintaining hot meal service even during active combat operations. He was discharged November 1945, returned to Philadelphia with Bronze Star, Combat Infantryman Badge, awarded to cooks who served in combat zones, and 4 battle stars on his European, African, Middle Eastern Campaign Medal. He'd served 1,247 consecutive days overseas, never rotating stateside, never taking leave beyond necessary rest periods. Back in Philadelphia, he reopened his father's restaurant. Salvatore had kept it running during the war but wanted to retire. Tony took over, renamed it Marino's Kitchen, and ran it for 38 years. He specialized in traditional Italian cuisine, nothing fancy, just solid food cooked well. The restaurant fed the neighborhood, working-class families, people who needed good meals at fair prices. He married Angela Di Stefano in 1946, raised 4 children, worked 7 days a week for most of his adult life. He never talked about the war. His children knew he'd been a cook in the Army, knew he'd been in Europe, didn't know details. The Bronze Star sat in a drawer, never displayed. He considered it routine, nothing special, just doing the job. The 28th Infantry Division held reunions every year. Marino attended occasionally, met old soldiers, shared memories. They always mentioned Thanksgiving 1944. "Best meal I ever had," someone would say. "You saved us that day." Marino would shrug. "I just cooked some turkeys. It wasn't anything special." He died January 2003, age 86, in Philadelphia, heart failure. His obituary in the Philadelphia Inquirer mentioned his restaurant career, his family, one paragraph about World War II service. No mention of Thanksgiving. No mention of crater ovens. No mention of feeding 5,000 soldiers under artillery fire. November 23, 1944 lasted 18 hours. A mess sergeant, 5 cooks, 10 volunteers, 47 frozen turkeys, 5 shell craters, 1 German farmhouse, 1,200 pounds of scavenged wood, constant artillery fire, temperatures barely above freezing, and 5,000 soldiers who ate hot Thanksgiving dinner when every regulation said it was impossible. Staff Sergeant Antonio Marino proved that taking care of soldiers isn't about following procedures. It's about finding solutions when the system breaks. The crater ovens, the improvised racks, the cooking under fire, all of it came from refusing to accept that hungry soldiers should go without hot meals on Thanksgiving. That refusal changed how the Army approached field cooking in combat zones. 47 turkeys, 5,000 meals, 0 casualties. One man's determination. That's the story. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and share. Comment below. Where are you watching from, and what do you think made the difference? Thank you for keeping these stories alive.